Hello, everyone. Welcome to Room for Discussion. Today, we are excited to begin our new special series on Israel and Palestine. The war in Gaza, Israel, South Lebanon, and other parts of the region has been raging for over a year now, and it has created a lot of fear, anger, and despair in the Middle East, but also beyond. Also, at our university, we felt strong differences regarding this topic. With this interview series, we want to create a space for Palestinians and Israelis to speak and for us to listen and understand. But don't worry, there is going to be room for audience questions in the middle and towards the end of the interview.
Today, we will be discussing life in Gaza, the ongoing conflict, and how media and journalism are shaping our understanding of it. Our guest today is Palestinian journalist Taghreed El-Khodary, who has reported from Gaza, from the Second Intifada and the war in Gaza, total from 2001 to 2009. I'm Saskia.
And I'm Elizabeth.
Please give a warm welcome to Taghreed El-Khodary.
Thank you. Taghreed, welcome to Room for Discussion. You have had a long career in journalism, and as Saskia just mentioned, you've also reported from Gaza, where you grew up. Can you tell us a little bit what led you into journalism? What made you choose that profession?
It's I was born, raised in Gaza. I went to schools in Gaza, and during my high school, the first Intifada erupted. So in a way, I was kind of, like aware, because during that time in the schools, we were not allowed by Israel. It was direct Israeli occupation. So they controlled the curriculum. So I was not taught our history, the Palestinian history. We were not allowed. And as a child, I always remember those books, geography, history. They were always like blank spaces in between countries, like, for example, Libya, Egypt, and then blank, Syria. And I, as a child, during my, how do you call it, elementary school, I asked my friend, what are these blank? What are they? As a child, I asked. And my friend, she was more politically aware because she has an uncle at the Palestinian Liberation Organization in Tunisia. She was more aware. I was not. My father was a businessman, And she said, "It's Palestine." She whispered, "It's Palestine." As children, I went as a child. I went and I filled the blank. Me and her, we filled the blank with the word Palestine. We went to the geography blank pages, and then we drew the map. And that was the exposure for us, because it was then the first Intifada. And my dream was to study abroad. But I wanted to study at Birzeit University in Ramallah. But then Israel closed that for us, for people in Gaza. They were not allowed to go to the West Bank. And I'm like, what to do? Rafah is open. So I wanted to study in Egypt, because that was the only opportunity if you want to study abroad. And at that time, we didn't have the Palestinian passport. We had a travel document, so we were allowed with that to go to Egypt. And then my father sent me, because I was very desperate. I wanted to study. I wanted to study at Birzeit University, but then I managed to go to EUC, American University in Cairo. And there, for me, the first exposure to the question of Palestine, where we were lectured by someone like Edward Said, where we took courses for the first time. I took a class, on the Palestinian history. And that was extremely not allowed by Israel during our school years. So, and then I was introduced there at the journalism department, and Oslo took place. And I was like, wow, we're going to have, a TV, we're going to have our first radio, our first TV, our first media. And then it was kind of attractive, to go into that major. And I did it. And then I went back and then I started, working with many journalists in 1995. I worked with many journalists from all over the world. I was kind of helping them with being a producer, stringer, whatever, you name it. And Gaza was really my real school when it comes to real journalism, working on the ground.
So after you went to study abroad, was it always your plan to also go back to Gaza, or was this something that's developed naturally?
Always. So I finished my AUC bachelor degree in journalism, mass communication, and then I went back to Gaza, and it was fascinating because it was the Oslo years, and to cover it, it was something, and to be a witness of that period, of history is extremely crucial. And, like, as I said, I was born in Gaza, raised, for us, it was like a dream. We're going to have a state. We're going to have self-determination. We're going to have freedom. So we're going to have our own TV. We're going to have all of that. It was like a dream. And then Arafat, for the first time at that time, he came his first visit to Gaza. So I happened to be with many journalists from all over the world, helping them at that time. That's how I started. And and then I went back. And then during Oslo, I went to study abroad. I did my master in the US, but I also worked in the US. And there, as a Palestinian, you always felt like you are pushed in the corner, trying to defend, explain your narrative as a Palestinian, which was completely absent. Like even, I lived in DC at that time. Oh my God, I worked, no clue. And the American people at that time, when you say you are from Palestine, they thought it's Pakistan. So really, like, it was like you had to invest so much energy to explain at that time. So after I finished my years in the US, I went back to Gaza, and then there was the second intifada. And I called myself the New York Times and I said, listen, if you want someone, please come and try me, and they did. And they sent at that time James Bennett, great chief editor at that time. And then really, like, we worked together for many years, and then another bureau chief, and then the last one, my God, it was like, the last one was the, because, so I had great bureau chief. The last one, Ethan, was a kind of, I would say, very pro-Israeli, like very, and then the moment I learned, I was actually in The Hague. I was invited after covering the war on Gaza 2008, 2009. I was invited to talk into, in many events in the States, by many think tanks, London. But then, they said, can you come here? And it was the Pugwash meeting. And then I went, it was in The Hague. And then, there I really heard, I was listening to BBC program. And then I learned that my bureau chief has a son in the Israeli army. And then, no way I can continue, because listen, I'm not going to endanger my sources. I'm not going to be killed, looked upon by people as a spy, giving information to someone that has someone in the house that has a son at the Israeli army. So it was, for me, it's like, I want to protect myself. I want to protect my sources. And also, I have a responsibility.
Right.
And that's when I took the decision to stop there.
Yeah.
With them.
So you've spoken now about your work as a journalist, but we wanted to ask you, are you speaking today here very much as a reporter, or are you speaking as a person? And what difference does that make for what you're saying?
I have to say, for many years, I was kind of, I always I always saw myself as an observer, during whatever, living in Gaza, living the first intifada, then, and you name it, the Oslo years, and then the second intifada. So I was describing, and then the first war on Gaza, 2008, 2009. I felt like an observer. I want to cover all elements. I want to be, the expert of all of that. And I was even giving analysis to international crisis group at that time because I was good at that. I felt like I can do it, but I felt like I can be an observer. But now, the genocide on Gaza, my family to be forcefully displaced, my neighbors, my friends, I know many that were killed. Many neighbors that have nothing to do with politics, not even journalists moving here or there. I mean, like this, I feel like I have to talk. I have the responsibility, the ethical responsibility to talk about the place. I live that place. I felt it was the best school I've ever had when it comes to journalism, when it comes to shaping me the way I am. And I feel it's the duty to talk about it. I'm not doing propaganda. I'm just explaining that Gaza, what they did to Gaza is beyond comprehension. Yeah. It's beyond comprehension that I cannot understand. But I have to say, I was while walking till here, I was thinking how Gaza has exposed, we talked about it, the hypocrisy of the Western power. They look Ukraine versus Palestine, how they talk about it, the language that they use. I mean, October 7, how it was covered, all these human, touchy stories with names. What about the Palestinians? And then you feel it's discrimination. And also, I was so mad when I was watching the international mainstream media for a long time during the first phase of the war. Oh my God, it was like awful to hear the language that they use and to keep repeating, whenever they interview Palestinian, Israel has the right to defend itself, period, without emphasizing the importance of, like abiding by the international law. And I'm not talking about the politicians who even, ignored that completely at the beginning. And I'm talking about the international mainstream media that, had the responsibility. I felt they contributed to this genocide because they gave, it was kind of a platform for the Israeli propaganda. That's how I felt. Oh, Hamas. What? Gaza is not Hamas. I'm sorry. What is Hamas? It's a group. What percentage of popularity do they enjoy? Blah, blah, blah. But nothing, like, okay, there was war crime committed October 7, but nothing can justify Israel's response to October 7 with a genocide, period. And that is my position.
Yeah. It's very understandable that then in seeing so much misrepresentation of what's going on, then you want to bring your own voice in stronger. Let's stop a little bit to talk about what's going on and happening now on the ground. And how would you say then that this conflict today is different? What is it that makes this a genocide? How do you see it differently?
I mean, more than 44,000 Palestinians have been killed. Among them, more than 17,000 children. Many are newly born. The images, many women, many elderly, many men who have nothing to do with anything. And the images we see, this is the first genocide that we see live because we have the most advanced technologies. Thanks to that. This is the first genocide that is covered live. And we see it. And we are thankful that we can see it. This generation can see it live as it happens. And they are not relying, because in the past, during my coverage to the second intifada, many, like, it was awful. Covering the second intifada, it was awful. The war, 2008, 2009, massacres were committed by Israel against many civilians in Gaza, and I was a witness. But it's unbelievable. And the complete destruction, more than 80% of Gaza is completely destroyed. Completely. I mean, wiping out homes, neighborhoods, towns, cities, refugee camps. Look what's happening in the north of Gaza. They only now what remains in Gaza now in the north, 400,000. They want them out. They are killing them, burning them, pushing them out. But they are not. They don't want to leave. 400,000. They're still in the north of Gaza. They don't want to leave because where to? Because they know there is no safe zone. So you keep pushing them, and like depriving them of food. I was talking to someone in Gaza yesterday, and he was like, in Mawasi area, he said, 600 people are living on those shaky, bad quality tents. And you have cold, you have winter. But he said 600, they share one toilet, one restroom for 600. Imagine the diseases. Imagine they killed everything. What Israel intend to do is turning Gaza into unlivable place. And this is their intention. It's a genocide, but what is the definition? If we go, I went myself to to read what's the definition of genocide when they start talking about it. I'm like, my God, it is what we see. It is what I hear. And we don't need, and what Israel is doing is not denying access to international journalists to go in. What does it mean? When you deny access to international journalists, and that's they did during 2008, 2009, because they don't want the world to see. Because I would like the international journalists, and I was so mad at them by accepting this order from Israel without challenging it from day one. It was only in July that they wrote this, that they requested an entry. It was only in July. After how many, 8 months of war? Finally, they spoke out. But yeah, I want them in. And that will be very important for the Palestinian narrative to come out, to be explained by different voices, not only the Palestinian journalists who are on the ground, who are doing an amazing, heroic work, and they keep going.
Yeah. We're going to speak in a moment more specifically about journalism, but now that we've spoken a lot about the role of one of the actors, Israel, in the situation that is happening in Gaza, we also wanted to touch a little bit upon Hamas, the other relevant actor from within Gaza, and you've covered the situation there when Hamas rose to power, and you also right now differentiated, right, that Hamas is not the Palestinians.
It's not all Gaza. It's not Gaza. We can.
And could you explain to us how Hamas gained its power in Gaza, and how also maybe its influence changed over the years until today?
The failure of the peace process has led to Hamas victory. Also, what was the peace process? The peace process didn't promise at the end. It was so clear. It wasn't, like going ahead with a sovereign Palestinian state. It wasn't leading to self-determination, freedom for the Palestinians. And then who can fill that void? It was Hamas.
Yeah.
Like indirectly, the international community not imposing pressure on Israel and also the Palestinian to achieve a very a viable peace that is based on equality and self-determination. Then someone has to come out to emerge, because the absence of a solution leads to someone else to emerge that is telling you, see, Israel is not going to give you a Palestinian state. During the Oslo, during the peace process, Israel was expanding, grabbing Palestinians' land where in the West Bank while they are negotiating. So what does it mean? That they were not interested. You cannot talk about a peace process while you are grabbing more land and land and land. So because people are seeing that their lands, you know, are taken by force, and the settlements, they come from Brooklyn, whatever, and they take their homes, their land. They are burning their olive trees. So that was during the peace process. And I was also there. I covered it at that time. And from there, so that was the reality for the Palestinians. And also, the sad part, it was Gaza before Oslo, before the peace process. There were no checkpoints, Israeli checkpoints. So my father used to take us by his car, from in front of our house in Gaza. We used to go to Jerusalem. We used to go to Jaffa. We used to go to Ramallah. We used to go to Ashkelon for groceries during that time. So these checkpoints, not only illegal settlements, were, came out all of a sudden during the, expanded more and more during Oslo years, but also Israeli checkpoints. And I hated that checkpoints because it's like no freedom. You feel like you are in a cage. And that was the feeling that I hated during Oslo years. So, I mean, that was the reality for any Palestinians. And those who used to work in Israel, they were treating like animals. Like how they crossed that border, that checkpoint, military checkpoint that Hamas destroyed during October 7 was how in hell they managed to do that. It's like a miracle. It's like, you'll never realize how powerful is that Erez checkpoint, the only exit to Israel from Gaza or the West Bank or Jerusalem. So that was the reality. Then who benefited? Because who was criticizing that? It was Hamas. And that's why Hamas gained popularity at that time. And they won the elections to say, you cannot just keep security coordination with Israel. Meanwhile, we don't have a Palestinian state. Meanwhile, there is no freedom, self-determination. We are getting more poor, life is becoming very miserable.
It seems very contradictory in a sense, because Israel claims at least that the only way in which it would, I don't know, continue towards some kind of coexistence would be if Palestine would be represented by more moderate forces. But at the same time, it suppresses any political movements from even emerging.
You have Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, they call him. And he is, if you want to talk about Mahmoud Abbas, he's the most moderate. That Israel will never dream of having another Abbas because he is so moderate. He really, truly believes in two-state solution. But what did they did to him? Nothing. They didn't give him. They really weakened him. They humiliated him. And they showed, so they are not helping someone like him. And also at the same time, their policies help creating, and giving popularity indirectly to Hamas.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the intention of Israel, they are not aiming for, let us say, two-state solution. No.
What do you think would be the alternative? How should they act in order to support such more moderate?
You mean Israel?
Forces? Yes.
Advice to Israel? You want to? Oh my God, no! It's advice. It's. I mean, Israel is an occupying force. It's a military. You're talking about an apartheid state, and what they are doing is definitely, whether even I'm not. You're talking about Netanyahu now, but the others are all with the genocide. They are supporting the genocide in Gaza. So it's so sad that even the other party in Israel, the other party, none is talking about, no, we cannot do that. So in a way, Israel wants to continue with its project. What I see as a solution is the only solution, I would say, is doing same as they did in Kosovo, in which international community, the main power, the powerful states, Western state, impose a solution.
The peace enforcement. So
Kosovo, they imposed a solution. Didn't they? They imposed it. Why can't they do it when it comes to Palestine, Israel? Why? That's the question. Why can't they do it? Because it's only for white people? It's only for Europeans? What about imposing it on both Israel to help Israel and Palestinians to bring peace to that region? You have to impose a solution, but based on international law and United Nations resolutions, based on equality. That's the only solution, because if you don't do it based on equality, UN resolutions, international law, as long as there is occupation, there will be always resistance. Now they are not happy. The world is not happy with what violence resistance, but also you have BDS, that is peaceful resistance. Why they are fighting it? They are fighting it very hard. BDS, the boycott movement. So it is peaceful. It's calling for, like boycott. Peaceful. It's peaceful, but they are against it. But as long as there will be, there is occupation, and that's from history, we learn it. It's like history repeats itself. There will be always resistance.
yeah. So could this be seen as a call for the US to then change its position in the UN? Because of course, any UN operation won't happen without the US support in it. So could this call for UN involvement be seen also as?
Yeah, I mean, like we have now with Trump, so useful thinking, and it was very disappointing that the Democrats also have failed to be different from the Republicans. So how in hell they gonna criticize the Republicans when it comes to this issue? They can't, because they did even worse. Now Trump will I believe he will go forward with the ceasefire, but he's gonna go back to only pushing for normalization with the Arab world, that vision. And how he can do it again? Remember, he was the one who initiated the Abraham Accord, in which forget about the Palestinians and let's go with the Arabs. And that explains the explosion that came from part of Hamas. October 7 was kind of to stop that. Did they succeed? Yeah, temporarily they did, but I think Trump will go ahead with that vision, because I don't think during his time we're gonna witness. I mean, like, he's not now gonna fight so hard to help Israel. You have ICC, which is I was like so happy finally. My God, I was happy, and we have to be happy. We have to celebrate this ICC. Like ruling.
Arrest warrant.
Yeah, I mean, like, it gives us, after all, we are living. Like, for the first time, I felt I'm so proud to live in the country that is hosting international criminal court. It's hosting international, court of justice. For the first time, I felt I'm so proud to be Dutch, citizen. Because listen, I mean, like, we as and also you as young generation, you should be so happy that there is hope with the international system that was created after World War II. There is still hope in that, because they wanted to fight it. They wanted to be like only for African countries. ICC is only, how dare you? It's only for African countries and Russia, but not our allies. How racist is that? It's unbelievable, Gaza, how Gaza has exposed all this double standard and hypocrisy.
Yeah. I think it's time to turn to some audience questions. We'll have some time for it now. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Yeah, we have one in the front row here.
Even if you don't agree with anything, please go ahead.
How can we contribute to furthering the Palestinian narrative in a place where every time it's brought up, someone thinks it's too controversial or it's not important, it's too far away? And I've gotten the comments so many times, why do you care? You're Egyptian, you're not even Palestinian. So how can we keep talking about this issue, keep trying to talk about it in academic places and getting people to care about it?
Luckily, the Palestinian cause is a just cause. Luckily. And that's why we are keeping our strength. And you should be proud to keep talking about it. We have to keep talking about it. And in a way, listen, for the first time, you have NOS. How do you, the main broadcasting, Dutch broadcasting company, how do you call it? Yeah. For the first time in its history, to write a story after October 7, to write the story of the 1948 Palestinian narrative. What happened in 1948? What happened to the Palestinians who were uprooted, expelled? So, for the first time, the journalists at NOS were allowed to write this. So, it's changing. Look, we are having this discussion here. This is amazing, huh? Yeah. I mean, it's you have to keep talking about it. You have to, and I was talking to many Gazans on the phone. They are really empowered when they see young people, like, for example, protesting, talking, sharing stories. And they are not even Palestinian. You don't need to be a Palestinian to believe in a just cause. You don't. It's a universal thing because we have to be with equality. The question, are you with equality or are you with discrimination? That's the question. Do you believe in protecting international law, the international system, or do you want to support the law of the jungle, whatever? Yeah, I mean, these are the questions. I mean, I have two kids. They are Dutch kids. They go to middle bar school here, and during the entire years of their bas school, like they were only studying one thing when it comes to the World War II, whatever. It's like Anna Frank, respect. I'm happy. I even read, about, the story. I went to the museum, and I was even at that time, like I always stopped by Israeli tourists. Where is Anna Frank Museum? I used to guide them. And as a Palestinian from Gaza, and that's it. Nothing when it comes to the 1948, when it comes to the Palestinians. Because after all, it's as simple as that. The Holocaust took place where? In Europe. And there is this guilt feeling. And then, Israel, was founded at that time, as come where, for the Jews, it's the guilt feeling. Let's help them with founding that state that is Israel. But then, yes, they solved the problem, but they created another problem that is the Palestinian cause, the Palestinian problem. So they solved a problem, but they creating another problem. And that's why and we are here now. As simple as that. Keep talking about it, keep sharing stories, even read about it. I'm now, we have to read what the legacy of Edward Said. He left many essays. And now I'm like, oh my God, I feel guilty. I have really to read. He left beautiful writings. And I feel I want to invest so much time, going back and, studying these things and reading more.
Thank you very much for your question. We are going to come back to audience questions towards the end, so don't worry if you still have a question. We want to now, you've touched on it a little bit already, but we want to focus more on your journalistic work. And we first wanted to ask you, you were reporting, as has been already said, during the second intifada from Gaza and also during the war in 2008 and 9. And we imagine that there is horrific scenes that you encounter during that. Could you explain to us how a day of your work looked like back then? Or is there even something like a daily routine?
Oh, it's it differs. When you cover a war, it's different from when you cover the second intifada,
Right.
and I even covered the civil war. I mean, but going back to the second intifada, it was really hard because Israel was not doing the killing at once. It was gradual. So, and I was doing also TV reporting at that time. So, I mean, like, I was so like, I remember I reached that stage in which I said, I'm not going to do any TV reporting if there are two killed. I will do the TV, it will be news item. But if it's like more than 10 killed, then I will do the TV. Like, you reach that stage in which Israel will push you to be like, okay, two killed, it's not a big story. One killed is not a big story. A house destroyed is not a big story. It has to be a lot to bring the attention, to bring all these international media in, to convince my editor to cover it. It has to be big. It has to be too painful. But also during the second intifada, I remember, and that shows you also, there was a story we worked on, and it was with James Bennett, and it was a beautiful story in which, despite the second intifada, you have the season of weddings in Gaza that is in the summer. People get married, many parties, like many wedding parties in one day. Like August is the season. So like I was like, why? Let's do a story on that. And I got like the photographer that was so shocked that he was a man, and I made him go into women, circles, and he did beautiful work, coming out with beautiful images of people, women dancing, celebrating wedding, what I mean, like, but then that story was not published because they didn't want that story to come out of Gaza, a happy story. It has to be always, very depressing, and very sad. Like it has to be too much, and that is, but this is a story of kind of, despite whatever, people go on with life, and no matter what.
Do you know why that decision was taken? Why they didn't want a hopeful story?
Yeah, even we were very surprised because it was a very good article, but it wasn't published at the end of the day. And also another documentary by PBS, I remember, I also helped, working on as a producer. And we followed a story, many characters from Gaza, even by someone who was about to explode himself, but he survived, whatever. And we did beautiful, like, documentaries, colorful, people, like, from all elements of that society, and then it wasn't it was put on the shelves despite all the money that's spent on a documentary. He said it's pro-Palestine. No, imagine, after spending all this money, and I was the only Palestinian working on it. I was the only Palestinian.
Yeah.
It was weird, and then you are realizing, so my God. And then when it comes to the war on Gaza, 2008, 2009, I wrote an essay at Columbia Journalism Review. It was called "The Smell of Paradise," and that smell of paradise didn't come from me. I wasn't. It came out of a woman. I was at that time international. My Israel prevented all the international journalists from coming in, including the New York Times. So I was the only one covering it for the New York Times. I was the only one. So I remember, all of a sudden, I was walking, I was, doing my walk, listening to beautiful music. And then all of a sudden, explosion after explosion after explosion. All of a sudden, one, like everybody was shouting, running. It was weird. And then I was like, everybody was running away from all these explosion. I decided to go towards the explosion. And I wanted to know what happened. And then I found a driver. He was the only one. Everybody was going the other direction. And then I found a driver. I said, can you take me to Shifa Hospital? And then he took me. And I said, but why are you going when everybody's fleeing? And he said, my son is a policeman. And then at that time, Israel killed all the policemen, and they were Hamas policemen. Hamas was governing the place. So they killed all of them in that they had training. Civil police were all murdered, one spot. So I go to the hospital, and I have to say, I cannot forget walking over bodies. You know, like all you go into the hospital, bodies are all over, the reception area. And I will never forget that. But then one day during that war, I went because I wasn't working only from the office. I had to see it to believe it. This is me. Because many people, they decide to work from the roof of a building or at their office, but I cannot. I have a responsibility. Any mistake, I can be blamed. It has to be factually correct. Then I went to this Zaytun area in Gaza City. It's a neighborhood, poor neighborhood, and very old neighborhood. So I go there, and then I stopped. I said I want to go to this Sammuni family. I hear they lost many members, and then they said 29 members of one family, Sammuni family, in Zaytun area. And then I meet this woman who was like, get out of here, blah, blah, blah. She was blaming me. You can read that essay. I don't want to go in depth into it. And then, and I said, what is that? Because they were covering things and I wanted, it was a donkey card. I can't remember very well. Yeah. And I said, why you cover it? What is it? And then they opened and I wanted to vomit. It was like dead bodies and the smell because they were left for many days. And I felt like vomiting. And then she said, how dare you? And she started like inciting against me for being disgusted. And she said, how dare you are disgusted? This is the smell of paradise. And that was the title.
In such situations, it's very difficult to leave your identity behind and your identity, your own Palestinian
But
identity.
at that time, it was hard as a human to see this.
Yeah.
And then I remained. I covered the killing of collaborators. I was asked not to cover it, but I saw it. I said, no, I cover these voices of fighters. And some may like it, some may not like it. I was told not to cover the killing of collaborators, but I saw. I said, no, I'm going to cover it. I was asked by Hamas that don't cover it. Someone from Qassam came to me. I said, come on, you do your work, I do my work. Don't intervene with my job. And I managed. And
can I ask how it's possible to get permission from people in power from Hamas?
Listen, when they know you don't have an agenda, you are not spy, you are not working for someone, you are not, like when they know you are neutral, you don't belong to any faction, you are not having an agenda here or there, they will leave you work. And that's what happened to me. They've never, I was untouchable. I covered everything. I said everything. I criticized them. Nothing happened to me. Nothing. I was, I was invited to always to interview their leaders, most senior leaders. I was invited to go to Syria. I was the only one who was accepted to interview Mishal in Syria at that time. So because they know I don't belong, I don't have a political agenda. I don't sell that propaganda. Yeah, so it helps when you are known to be, independent. That's the word. Because after all, there is no objectivity. We all have biases, but we can be fair, and that we can do.
Yeah,
you have to be aware of your biases in order to be fair, and that's my conclusion.
Yeah, and now, of course, we've already touched upon this previous as well, but yeah, more than 150 Palestinian journalists have been killed in the past year, and the International Federation of Journalists accuses Israel of deliberately targeting these journalists. What kind of an effect does this news blackout have? And now that you're reflecting on the role that you had also in reporting on Hamas and what this is doing, now that there's no no journalist basically that can operate safely. What is the effect of this news?
I was talking to this Omar, 22 year old, and I was telling him, your English is perfect. I was chatting with him. Should I suggest you to talk on TV, and he said, no, I'm afraid. I'm afraid because whoever does TV reporting is killed. I want to keep writing. It's better. He feels like safe writing articles, but he doesn't feel safe working, on the spot to have this, like to be on TV, to be known. And it was so sad. But he's a brilliant writer. And I was talking to him, like yesterday, he's in Gaza in the middle areas. So it was so sad to see that they are scaring people. They are targeting people because I said, why you say that? He said, they killed my friend. It's the woman who they killed with her husband, new born baby, and two of her kids. Forgot her name, but it was recent, and she was killed. And it was dear. She was a very close to him, a very close friend to him. And he said, I'm afraid to be like in a podcast or being interviewed like on the record. I prefer to write.
Yeah. And of course, this is
And I have to tell you, I know many of these people who were killed, and it's devastating. It's really sad, and I know them as good, journalists, good analysts at the same time.
yeah, and it must be very frustrating because you've worked in such a position yourself. But
Yeah, I could be one.
But also because yeah, media is really our only basis of knowledge in order to even understand what is happening there right now. So what would you say? How can this situation be improved? How can
As long Israel doesn't want you to see, they don't want us to see.
exactly?
And that's why they are doing that. They are scaring the hell out of many journalists. Many are choosing not to work, and others they are, but their lives are at risk, and we see that. But Israel's objective is for us not to see what's happening, and that explains why they don't want the international journalists to go in. And the sad part, this is the scary part. Once this is over, I hope there will be accountability, that not like life will go on like, yes, it's over, ceasefire now. No, there has to be accountability for this not to happen again. And that is the challenge that we have to call for, and the young generation have to call for.
Yeah. Let's turn again to the audience for some more questions. Yeah, we have one all the way in back there.
We know that the New York Times today has quite strong rules about what you can and what you cannot write about Gaza, also the use of specific words. Did you ever encounter this kind of censure? And also, can you say something about this policy today?
Right now, you mean, or like yes?
Right now?
Yeah, I mean, amazing. The word. How many times they use the word atrocities and massacres when it comes to Israel, like October 7? How many times they used it? Oof. How many times when it comes to the Palestinians in Gaza, or what the settlers are doing in the West Bank? How many times? Almost none. It's very frightening. I mean, in a way, the media is complicit. The media is working side by side with the political elitist. Like they are working with the propaganda machine. And you know, I mean, it's awful. They have the responsibility, they have the ethical responsibilities uh, to see things, to fight, to go in Gaza. They have to boycott the Israeli officials, for God's sake. Boycott them. Don't interview them unless they let you in. Boycott covering the Israeli narrative unless they go in into Gaza. Why couldn't they pressure Israel with that? Okay, I'm not gonna cover you unless you let me in. No, they say, oh, it has to be embedded journal. You have to come. Oh my God, look what happened with the Shifa Hospital, for example. No, it was Rantisi, the children hospital. They said what the tunnels under these two hospitals. Shifa Hospital. Shifa Hospital. I live not far from Shifa Hospital, and I used to go as a journalist all the time. And for God's sake, you know, like, do you think Hamas is that stupid to have tunnels, offices under Shifa where it's so crowded on daily basis of people because it's the main hospital? They said this lie, human shields. You know what human shields? My neighborhood, Rimal area, Gaza City, has zero Hamas. But they came to Rimal, they destroyed from day one at the beginning. The first phase of the war, that was the place they went because it's so easy. No Hamas is there. Hamas was in the east, you know, in the north a bit, you know, but not in Gaza City, where, you know, like it's open. There is no Hamas there, but they went there because it's safe, it's easy to get there. And then they came out with this propaganda. You know, the thing is, they stayed in a beautiful house that belongs to relatives, and 3 weeks they took it as a position for them. And after they left it, they burnt it. You ate, you slept, you used the whole house. Why to burn the house after using it as a military base? Why they have this policy of burning houses? Burning houses. This is what I don't understand. You are destroying homes, but why to burn them? I mean, what it's just incredible. And I don't wanna did I answer your question? Yeah. But you don't want to go on and on because I think you see all of that, you know, what the Israeli soldiers are sharing themselves. And you know, listen, uh, you know, like human shields. I mean, the Israeli soldiers, some of them are coming as like talking about how Israel is using Palestinians as human shields, and they have really like very strong evidence. Evidence is there. But when it comes to the Palestinians, there is no evidence that Hamas is using them. But we have evidence that Israel is raping, torturing prisoners in Israeli jails, and also using Palestinians as human shields. We have evidence.
Yeah, I want to follow up a little
And
bit on.
also, when anyone is saying, you know, Hamas during October 7, they used rape as a tool. What the? Do you understand Hamas? I mean, these fighters, when they left their homes, they went to to do that operation. They decided, knowing they won't come back, that they will die as martyrs. That's how they see. This is how you read. This is the mentality of Hamas, if you understand it. So, to be a martyr, how you understand it, the logic is this is what they think. They will go to God after being martyr. Does it make sense to rape before meeting God? I mean, for me, you say one, two raped, I understand. The gangs that were allowed, no, not understand. No, that I understand that yes, they did it. You know, I can believe it. I can believe that they did. If you say one or two of Hamas raped, then I believe it. But if you say all Hamas fighters raped, that they used it as a weapon, I do not believe it. Okay? And I covered Hamas very closely. Also, gangs were also allowed, Hamas did also a stupid mistake allowing these gangs to go in.